And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and I am talking about the best cards in each color in the Commander format today. This sort of fits into my controversial video month a little bit. I don't know if this is controversial. It is certainly a topic that you're going to get a ton of feedback on, right? I know there's going to be lots of people in the comments telling me what their picks are and how I'm wrong and all that good stuff. Basically, what I'm doing here is I'm just looking at each individual color, and I will also be including colorless, and I will also be including lands because that's really important. And I'm going to be picking out the two best cards because picking one is just impossible. So I'm going with the two best from each color. I saw a video that the MTG Goldfish guys did a few months back, and I thought I would give a run at it, put my 2 cents into the subject because I have a particular way of thinking about it. There won't be a lot of huge surprises here, I don't think, maybe a few, but for me, what I'm looking at a lot is I'm looking at two things. First of all, what does this color do really, really well? I'm also looking at what if I'm putting a 5-color deck together, right? I'm putting a 5-color deck together. What cards am I going to auto include from those colors? What cards are just, in that color? That's one of the first cards you probably think of, right? The best cards in that particular color in the format. As mentioned, I'm going to start out with lands though, and there is a lot to talk about with lands, and I know a lot of people will probably mention any land that adds a lot of mana. Like a lot of people might say, oh, Gaia's Cradle, that's the best land on the format. First of all, in my opinion, Gaia's Cradle is disqualified. Cabal Coffers is also disqualified because they're a certain color. Gaia's Cradle, to me, that's a green card. So if you want to talk about what are the best lands in the format or what are the best cards in the format in certain colors, Gaia's Cradle will have to be under green as far as I'm concerned. In order for a land to fall into this category, I mean, for me, the way I'm doing it, it's got to be colorless. It's got to be able to go in any deck. So those lands are already disqualified. And also, a land that's just adding mana, I don't care how powerful it is, I want something else, right? And so that's what I chose. And I have Ghost Quarter here because one of the most important things, one of the things that every Commander deck needs, it's one of my 6 things every Commander deck needs, is to be able to destroy your opponent's lands. Again, because of the aforementioned Gaia's Cradle, Cabal Coffers, etc., lands that will just completely take over the game, you have to be able to deal with them. And the easiest way by far to do it, and obviously you can do it in any deck because we have colorless options, is to do it in land form, to have a land in your deck that is going to blow up your opponent's land. And I use Ghost Quarter as an example. I mean, it's a cheaper option. You can use Wasteland, sure. Any of those lands could be included here. Strip Mine, obviously, is one that's been used in the format forever. They're a little more expensive. Any of those is fine. I just use Ghost Quarter. That is, to me, something that absolutely even a 5-color deck, I'm going to put a Ghost Quarter in there, right? Because you need to be able to do that. And Ghost Quarter is a better option there because you can also use it to mana fix yourself if you're super, super desperate. The other one I chose was Blast Zone, and it really is tough. For me, the Ghost Quarter Wasteland effect that was a no-brainer for me. It's one of the easiest decisions I've made with any of these color combinations. The second one was a little more difficult. I went with Blast Zone because it is removal. And I thought, this is why Blast Zone, as soon as it was printed, immediately became a Commander staple and has been reprinted in a ton of Commander sets for that reason, because it is super important in a Commander game to be able to deal with your opponent's stuff, and having a colorless option that you can easily slot into your deck, that it's not a great removal option, but it is an option, right? If I'm in a mono red deck and my opponent has a Rhystic Study in play, I can get 3 counters on this and blow up the Rhystic Study. Am I going to get anything else? Maybe, maybe not, but it could be a game saver. Could give an honorable mention here to Scavenger Grounds, right? Any colorless land that is really solving a problem, something you absolutely need in your deck, right? You need Graveyard Hate, you need land destruction, you need removal, and having a colorless option for that is fantastic. That's why these are obviously going in tons of Commander decks and are Commander staples. I chose Blast Zone here. I'm pretty happy with that choice. Next up, we have the artifacts. And again, just like the lands, the stipulation I'm giving to myself here is it's got to be colorless. If it's not colorless, it doesn't really fit what we're talking about. So of course, the 2 artifacts I chose here are colorless options. And my first choice is Lightning Greaves. It is the most popular equipment in the entire format, I believe. Maybe Swiftfoot Boots has it beat. I don't know. You definitely could give an honorable mention here to Swiftfoot Boots. And obviously the advantage there is it is hexproof instead of shroud, which in certain situations that is way better. The Equip Zero is just so good. It is just so good. And being able to constantly be moving that around, one of the things I don't love about equipment and why I don't use them that much is because I just find them to be mana intensive, constantly re-equipping and all that stuff. I mean, it's nice that once your creature dies, the equipment sticks around, but it's really mana intensive. And I find for me, I just really don't want to be using my mana for that. And of course, with Lightning Greaves, you don't have to worry about it at all. It gives you two things that most commander decks are going to want. I mean, giving your commander shroud, or I guess any important creature in your deck, is incredibly important in almost every commander deck. You could put this card in any commander deck. I mean, even if you don't want to be putting on your commander because you're playing a Voltron strategy or you want to be untapping your commander or something, put it on a different creature. But also, it has haste. So any of those decks where you want to be attacking with your commander right away or any other creature right away, it's giving that as well. It's giving two really, really fantastic abilities that only cost 2 mana. And of course, the Equip Zero is the big thing. So I can just constantly be moving it around as people do all the time. I cast some creature on my first main phase, equip it with Lightning Greaves so I can attack with it right away. And then on my second main phase, I move it back over to my commander so that my opponents can't remove it on their turns. You know, it's super versatile. It's probably the best equipment in the entire format, I think. Got to give it a mention here. The only thing that comes close to beating it is my other choice here, which is Skull Clamp. And I know a lot of people will say, where's the Mana Rocks? Where's Sol Ring? No, I didn't want to put a Mana Rock in here. That is, I guess, one of the things that Colorless does best. Sure, but lots of other colors do it as well. I put Skull Clamp here because, and funny enough, I got 2 equipment. It just worked out that way. This is something that Colorless does not do great, but in this case, does it better than almost any other color, if that makes any sense. Skull Clamp is a absurdly busted card. It is one of the best card draw options in the history of the game, in my opinion. Of course, it's been banned in formats because it's such a broken, ridiculous card. It's just one of the best card draw options in the entire format. So the fact that it's colorless means that you also have that option in any commander deck, I guess, unless you're playing a commander deck that doesn't have creatures. And of course, it's extra good in a commander deck where you got little 1/1s sitting around all the time. It's just absurd in decks like that, as we have all seen. But even just, I stick this on my commander, and if someone happens to kill my commander, I get to draw 2 cards. It's just a nice little added bonus. If I'm in any deck where I'm sacrificing creatures, it's extra good. If I'm in any deck where I'm, maybe an equipment deck, it's extra good. It's extra good in a lot of situations. But just like with the Lightning Greaves, you can throw Skull Clamp in any deck, and it's going to be, at worst, a decent card draw option for you. And it's one of the best card draw options in the history of Magic. So I think I have to give it a mention here. Moving on to white, and white was a little bit tough for me because, as I just talked about in my best colors video, spoiler alert, white came out on top there because white does almost nothing badly in the commander format. It does so many things really, really well. So I thought, okay, well, I should probably concentrate on the 2 things that white does best, and also the 2 things that in a commander game are absolute blowouts. One of the things white does better than any other color in the commander format is just the incredibly game-changing plays. And I know people say, really, white? What are you talking about? Well, I'll talk about it with the cards that I chose here. So first up is Farewell, which is arguably the best board wipe in the entire format. Austere Command, I'll throw that out again. Honorable mention. Obviously, white does removal better than any other color by far. It's not even close. And in particular, the board wipes. That's why I didn't choose Generous Gift here, or maybe Swords to Plowshares. Sure, it does that all great. It does spot removal the best, but the board wipes are where it is a really, really huge payoff. You don't get more of a payoff from a single card, I think, in all of the commander format than you do from a board wipe. Board wipe is usually more impactful than any other single card you're going to cast in a commander game, with the exception of, maybe like an Expropriate. That gives you a lot of value, sure. I would argue that it gives you less value than does a Farewell. Even a Rise of the Dark Realms, and those cards are really expensive. Sure, okay, you got a Rise of the Dark Realms. Congratulations, you spent a whole lot of mana to steal everyone's everyone's creatures, but then on my turn, I'm going to cast a Farewell, and then it was all for nothing, right? So that's exactly what I'm talking about. Rise of the Dark Realms or Expropriate they're always good. I could easily make the argument that a Farewell is going to be more good in more situations. There is so many situations where this card's going to be an absolute blow for you. It is the best board wipe in the entire format, exiling, also hitting artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and graveyards. And of course, the fact that you can choose which modes you want to avoid makes it extra good. So by far what white does best in the format, board wipes, and I think this is probably the best one. Of course, on the other end of the spectrum, I chose Teferi's Protection, which is, again, it's doing the exact same thing, but on the other end of the spectrum. Just like I talked about in my best colors video about how protection is so important in the format, that situation where the Farewell is going to be so impactful, the Teferi's Protection, of course, if someone else casts a Teferi's Protection, now they're the only person who's not having their stuff exiled. Can you get any more of an advantage? That's a massive advantage in a Commander game. We've all seen it, right? Of course, again, what white does best is protection. Those are the two things in my colors video that I talked about that white does best, better than any other color by far, removal and protecting your stuff. And I believe I chose the two best options here, Farewell and obviously Teferi's Protection, which not only does it protect all your stuff, it also protects you as well. There is ways to kill you once you've resolved the Teferi's Protection, but it is very, very difficult. You're not going to see it happen very often. And I mean, just in general, again, even if I'm putting a 5-color deck together, I'm going to throw Teferi's Protection in there. Everyone does, right? The only other card that could get a mention here is Smothering Tithe, I think. Again, it's not something that white does super well, although I would argue that white does ramp fairly well because of cards like Smothering Tithe. It is obviously a very powerful card. And if you were making a 5-color deck, the 2 white cards that you would absolutely for sure put in there, if cost wasn't an issue, I think would probably be Smothering Tithe and Teferi's Protection. Sure, you could absolutely make that argument, especially because both of them only cost a single white mana. But I think I had to give board wipes a mention here, or removal a mention here. I think for sure. So this is what I've chosen. I'm pretty happy with these choices. 2 best white cards in the Commander format, Farewell and Teferi's Protection. I'm happy with that choice. Next up, we got blue, and this will probably be the least surprise to anyone. There's not going to be a lot of surprises in this video, I'll just say. So maybe this video isn't as controversial as I thought it might be. Of course, the first one's going to be Cyclonic Rift. You know, I just did my video. It's funny how people might think I'm flip-flopping back and forth here. I just did my video about cards not worth buying, and Cyclonic Rift was at the top of the list there. Again, spoiler alert if you haven't already watched that video. Mostly because of the price, right? It's a $30 card or more. Is it going to make your deck that much better to go and buy this? I don't think so. I think you'll just do perfectly fine without it. I have it in 0 decks and I do just fine. Will it make your deck better? Of course it will. It's a phenomenal card in the Commander format. It solves a lot of problems. That's why I like it. It's a fantastic, one of the best problem solvers in the entire format. Again, just going into the whole aspect that I talked about with board wipes, except now we're doing it at instant speed. It's less permanent, of course, but it is an answer to a whole lot of things, and that's what makes it so great. Will you miss it if it's not in your deck? No, I think you'll be okay, but certainly your deck will be better if you put it in there. But of course, what does blue do best in the entire format? The most important thing that blue does in the entire format, of course, is counterspells. And so Fierce Guardianship is the other card that I've chosen here. And again, there could be a lot of debate here. This is the part where maybe the debate comes in. I was thinking these were really obvious choices, and then I thought, okay, maybe Rhystic Study is, that is one of the best draw options in the entire format. And of course, blue does do that really, really well. And again, if I'm putting a 5-color deck together, I'm going to include Cyclonic Rift and Fierce Guardianship, right? Of course. You have one of the best answers in the entire format, and also, I would argue, the best counterspell in the entire format. Unless, of course, you don't plan on casting your commander. I mean, it's debatable for sure. But also, you probably would put a Rhystic Study in your 5-color deck, because that's one of the best generic card draw options in the format as well. So you would not be at fault here if you said that Rhystic Study should be one of the 2 options for blue. Maybe you could bump out Cyclonic Rift for Rhystic Study? I don't know, but I just thought counterspells had to get a mention here. That is what blue does best in the format by far. It's an incredibly powerful, game-changing thing that pretty much only blue does in the format, or at least does well. And so Fierce Guardianship is the one I mentioned. You know, again, if you want to mention Force of Will or some other counterspell that you think is better, that's fine. Fierce Guardianship is the one I chose. I thought a counterspell needed to be mentioned here. Getting to green, and green is, there's a little bit of a change in what I'm talking about here with as far as green, because of course I'm talking about what these colors do best. And of course, what green does best in the Commander format, without a doubt, is ramping. So of course I have to mention a ramp card here. And I chose Sakura Tribe Elder. I know people might think that's silly. I mean, you could choose a more popular one, like maybe a Cultivate or something. Sakura Tribe Elder, I'm just in love with that card. I always have been. It's one of my favorite creatures, one of my favorite cards of all time. I was very heavily into Magic and playing Standard a lot when Champions of Kamigawa came out. And I very quickly realized, hey, this is a creature, you know, and again, in Standard or Modern or those formats, extra good with I could play on turn 2. And if my opponent attacks me, I can chump with it and then respond by sacrificing it and going into the land. What a fantastic ramping option. I will point out, though, ramping isn't that important in those formats. As I have pointed out many times before, not a lot of people are ramping in even Standard, certainly not Modern or Legacy. They don't really care. It is way more important and possibly even blown out of proportion in the Commander format because it gives you such a big advantage. And of course, Sakura Tribe Elder is my pick for the best option. It only gets a basic land, sure. Maybe Nature's Lore, okay, it gets a forest. Farseek, it's going to be a 2-mana option for me for sure, because the 2-mana slot I think is best for ramping options. I like Sakura Tribe Elder because I can chump with it. I can sacrifice it to get a dice trigger. I can get it back into my graveyard if I'm doing a recursion theme. There's so many other bonuses you get to playing a Sakura Tribe Elder over those other cards, on top of the fact that a Farseek or a Nature's Lore aren't that good on turn 8, whereas a Sakura Tribe Elder can actually be used as a blocker or a dice trigger, or even getting in for damage possibly. So having that body is a lot more important later in the game. That's why I chose that one. My other choice was Eternal Witness, which funny enough is arguably my favorite creature of all time. One of my favorite cards of all time, Eternal Witness is Sakura Tribe Elder. And also funny enough, they were both in Standard at the same time. Eternal Witness came out in 5th Dawn, and again was another one of those cards that when it first came out didn't get a whole lot of fanfare, and very quickly people realized, oh man, this is great. I have this creature come down, I get any card out of my graveyard, and I also have a decent blocker or even possibly an attacker. Just really, really fantastic value, just like with the Sakura Tribe Elder. Those guys were both in Standard at the same time, and of course Eternal Witness very quickly became a Commander staple as well. Again, the turn 8 situation, what card do you want to see more off the top of your deck on a turn 8 than an Eternal Witness? I'm never sad to see it. I peel it off the top, and all of a sudden my graveyard becomes, I tutor for any card. It becomes my hand. I just get whatever card I want out of my graveyard, put it back into my hand so I can use it again. I'm never disappointed to see this card. I love it so much. And again, what does green do outside of ramp really, really well? And I probably should have mentioned this in my best colors video. It's a category that if I was doing it again, I would include, which is the recursion or getting stuff out of your graveyard, because it's something green does really, really well. Green doesn't do the actual recursion like black does, where it puts it directly into play. It just gets the regrowth effects, right? Gets it back to your hand. Maybe you could give regrowth an honorable mention here, but Eternal Witness is my vote for the best option here. I can blink it. I can get it back out of my graveyard. It can be a blocker. Stuff stapled on creatures is always better. You know, other than ramp, right? You think of green in the Commander format. What does green do best after ramp? A lot of people might say card draw. Maybe, I don't know. What's the best green card draw option? I mean, there's certainly a few that you could give a mention here. I think it's getting stuff out of your graveyard. Green really does that really, really well. Again, I should have gave it a mention in my best colors video because it does it so well. It bumps it up in the Commander format, in my opinion, and this is the best option. I guess maybe another option that I could have thrown out here is like a Craterhoof Behemoth. Certainly a powerful card in the format. Closes out a lot of games. It is something that green does really, really well. Yeah, you would not be wrong in giving Craterhoof Behemoth a mention here, but I like Eternal Witness better. Red up next. And again, what are the cards you think of when you think of red in the Commander format? Certainly there's one that I'm going to mention first. That is probably the first card that everyone thinks of. The second card I mentioned might be a little more controversial, but for me, it's a no-brainer. So obviously, the first one is Dockside Extortionist. It is far and away the best red card in the format, in my opinion, and not for the reasons that like people want this card banned, and I'm not sure why. If you want this card banned because it combos off with stuff, how many other cards in the format combo off with stuff? Like, do you want Thassa's Oracle banned as well? Maybe you do. I don't know. I mean, there's so many two-card combos in the format that why would you be concerned with Dockside Extortionist? It's weird for me to be talking about how this card's not as good when I have it listed as the best card in the Commander format for red. But what's the two-card combo with this guy? I don't think there is one. Usually you need another card to close out the game. If you're creating infinite mana doesn't win the game, so therefore you need another card to close out the game. It certainly is good. It enables a lot of things, just like Underworld Breach enables in a lot of things. Would people call Underworld Breach the best red card in the Commander format? Maybe some people would. I certainly don't. I don't see it that often, hardly ever. It certainly enables a lot of things. It certainly ends games, but that is not what makes a card good in the Commander format. Dockside Extortionist is a fantastic card in the Commander format because, yes, it does do those things, and it can give you a mass. Again, what are the cards that are giving you these massive advantages? A Dockside Extortionist can give you a massive advantage like a Farewell or a Cyclonic Rift or a Skull Clamp or something like that. It can also just do a lot of little things as well. It can just be a good value-y card. It's a creature with an ETB that I can blink, bounce, return from my graveyard, whatever, and it's going to give me this nice little advantage. I used to have this in my Gerard deck only because it's a good ETB creature. It's a great ETB creature that when my board gets wiped, my commander goes to the graveyard, I exile my commander, and my Dockside Extortionist comes back into play, and I get some more treasures from it. It's a good ETB creature. So it fits in all those different scenarios. It's just a all-around fantastic commander card. I'm not putting it on this list because it's busted and it combos off. I'm putting it on this list because it's just an all-around good commander card. That, again, you could put in any commander deck and you will be happy to see it. My second choice is Deflecting Swat, and this one it maybe is debatable. I think the only card that people would think of other than this is Jeska's Will. That's a card that people really love. I don't use it. I actually have a copy of that card that I don't play because I actually don't love it. Are you going to play Jeska's Will in your 3 or 4 color deck? I don't know, maybe people do. It's a decent ritual effect and it gives you impulse draw. Again, you'll only get both if your commander's in play. It's good, certainly, but again, if I'm playing a 5-color deck, how many of those are you putting Jeska's Will in your 5-color deck? I seriously doubt it. Maybe there are people that like that card so much they do put it in their 5-color deck. Deflecting Swat in a 5-color deck? Yes, please. This card is bonkers, even without the free option. Right? So now I don't even have my commander in play. You may choose new targets for target spell or ability covers a million different scenarios in a commander game. And again, game-changing scenarios, as I just talked about. Again, the 2 cards that I mentioned in red are absolute no-brainers, in my opinion, because Dockside Extortionist and Deflecting Swat, in my opinion, those 2 cards alone make red a better color in the commander format. If money wasn't an issue, any deck you're putting together with red, whether it be mono red or a 5-color deck, the first 2 red cards you're going to want to put in there, regardless of what you're doing in your deck, Dockside Extortionist and Deflecting Swat are going to make your deck way better, without a doubt. I would love to see a Deflecting Swat in my hand at any point during a commander game. I would feel much safer if it was. It's just like the removal protection thing. It almost falls into both categories, where it's protecting your stuff and it also can be removal as well. It can be a real game changer. Absolutely. Phenomenal card in the commander format, without a doubt. All right, moving on to black, and I really don't think there's much to talk about with black. I saved black till last because I thought it was the easiest to cover, or again, maybe not. It's really curious. I'm really curious to read the comments and see what everyone else thinks with regards to this. One of these, again, is for sure going to be a no-brainer. What does black do best in the format? What's the first thing you think of when you think of black? You know, if I'm putting a 5-color deck together, what is the thing that I'm going to want black for, right? I'm going to want green for the ramping. I'm going to want white for the removal or protecting my stuff. What am I going to want black for? I'm going to want black for tutoring. So, of course, I got to mention a tutor here, and Demonic Tutor, I think, is the best in the entire format. What's better than Demonic Tutor? I mean, Is there debate on whether or not I should mention a tutor here? Absolutely not, right? Of course. The best thing that black does in the commander format is tutoring, just like with blue with counterspells. You don't have to do it in your blue commander deck, but you'd be silly not to. You'd be missing out on something that blue does really, really well that is going to help you a lot in a commander game. And the same goes with black and tutoring. You don't have to put tutors in your commander deck, and a lot of people loathe tutors and they completely avoid it. Sure, no problem with that. And I will just say I have demonic tutor in 0 decks. Okay. There are, I would say a lot of these cards I do use, but there are a couple of cards on this list that I don't play at all. Cyclonic Rift being another example, Fierce Guardianship being another example. Those cards I don't use at all. And in fact, I don't have Deflecting Swat in any decks. I don't own a copy of that card. Demonic Tutor, I don't have in any decks, but it would be silly for me to not put this as the best black card in the format because tutoring is really, really powerful. In the commander format, black does it way better than any other color, and demonic tutor is the best option. Vampiric tutor may be better because it costs 1, maybe, but demonic tutor puts it directly into your hand, which is what you want, right? If I am on, again, I'm on turn 8, what do I want to see off the top? Do I want to see a demonic tutor off the top or a vampiric tutor? If I see a vampiric tutor off the top, oh, now I can go search for that answer. I go search for my farewell because I need to wipe this board. But I got to wait a turn, right? I got a tutor to the top of my library, so I got to wait a whole nother turn before I get that card in my hand. I might be dead by then. Demonic tutor just puts it right in your hand so you can do it immediately. So for that reason, it's better. I don't think that's even arguable in my opinion. Best tutor in the format for sure and has to get a mention here. And after that, I was like, where do you go from here? And if there is a card that I'm going to auto include in my mono black deck or my 5-color deck, if I'm putting a deck together, it's Toxic Deluge. Again, what does black do best in the format? Tutor is one. I mean, I guess people would say card draw. It does card draw really, really well. And it's kind of funny that the only card draw I mentioned on this list was the coolest option. But if I'm putting a deck, I mean, Necropotence, that's the best card draw option maybe in the game, but I'm not putting that in my 5-color deck. It costs 3 black, right? You know, again, maybe I should have given Rhystic Study a mention in this video because that's probably the first option, just generically good card draw that you could put in your 5-color deck, but also works great in any deck. Necropotence, I don't think it works great in any deck, and you know, it starts getting tough putting that in decks outside of mono black or 2-color. Toxic Deluge is arguably, I'm not saying it is, again, I think probably Farewell is a better overall board wipe because of course Toxic Deluge only hits creatures, but you do have to get rid of those creatures, and Toxic Deluge is arguably the best creature board wipe in the entire format. Commander Staple has been forever for obvious reasons. It's a phenomenal card. I wasn't sure what to mention here. This was the one of all my decisions that I made here. You know, the first one, the Demonic Tutor, no brainer. That was easy. Of course, I got to mention a Black Tutor. Where do you go from there? You know, what else do you mention? Should I mention another tutor? I didn't want to mention the same thing, so I wanted to make something different. I didn't think Necropotence was a good fit here, you know, and if I'm going to mention card draw, what other options should I be mentioning? I don't know, right? I don't know if there's an option for black and card draw that's generically good that can fit in any deck. I don't think so, right? In any deck, that's what I'm looking for here, is this fits in any theme. Toxic Deluge for me is a card that it's the first thing I grab whenever I'm making a deck that has black that wants a board wipe. I have Toxic Deluge in all my black decks, and I have Demonic Tutor in none. So, I mean, that alone says something. I don't know. That was my choice. What would it be for you guys? If you're picking the best cards in each color and the colorless options and the lands, what are you going to pick? 2 cards. Again, if we just went with 1, it would be way too difficult. I thought 2 gave me a nice option for I get to pick 2 things in different categories, and these are the options I chose. You guys let me know in the comments below what you think. I know you will, and I'm looking forward to it. That is it for today, though, and thanks for tuning in.